We've all heard it over and over and over and over for years, for decades. Don't drink and drive. That certainly is a message that we're all familiar with, but what we don't hear much of, if ever, is this: don't smoke and drive either. But that's what researchers have highlighted this past week when they revealed their findings from a 6-year analysis of fatal car crashes in a major Ohio county. Now catch this. The study found that over 40% of the drivers who died in motor vehicle collisions tested positive for THS. That is the principal psychoactive component of cannabis, or shall we just put it plainly, marijuana. Now, unfortunately, today we're living in a time where most of the public, at least it seems that way, they consider marijuana and the usage of marijuana something that comes at minimal risk or even beneficial effects. And as a result, we've seen marijuana legalized in places all across the United States and around the world. But studies like the one that we're talking about here suggest otherwise. This is anything but safe. And joining me now to unpack this further is Dr. Jane Anderson, Vice President of the American College of Pediatricians. Dr. Anderson, welcome to Washington Watch. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so over 40% tested positive for THS, with the average blood levels far exceeding those considered to cause impairment. So just break this down. What does this research suggest to you?
Well, it's not surprising. There have been previous studies that indicated there may well be a relationship between the use of marijuana and car accidents and fatal car accidents. So it's not a surprise because we know what marijuana or THC does to the human brain. It's the effects on the brain that are so damaging. Marijuana actually affects many organs in the body, including it can cause heart attacks, lung problems. Actually, it increases cancers. But it's the effects on the brain that, are most important and obviously most significant when we're talking about traffic accidents. So the major component of the plant from cannabis is THC, and it affects what we call the CB1 receptors in the brain. And those are located in places where you would expect, in the pleasure center of the brain, in the memory center, and in the frontal lobe, where the frontal lobe is sort of our processing center, our ability to plan ahead and strategize, and our judgment center and our perception center. And so it's not surprising if our perceptions are off, if our judgments are delayed, if we have a delayed reaction time. All those things put together are going to make the risk for accidents much greater.
Wow. Well, your organization, the American College of Pediatricians, released an update. After all this information came out, you released a position paper on the use of marijuana. And I want to unpack that a little bit because the focus, it seemed in the paper, was on youth. Why was that?
Oh, it's so important that the youth in America and the parents in America understand that, first of all, the marijuana that's being used today is much different than was used in the 80s and 90s. The plants are specifically genetically engineered now to produce much more of the THC versus the cannabidiol, which is also produced by the plant. So as the percentage of the THC, which is the psychoactive component, goes up, well, then the CBD, which sort of ameliorates a lot of the effects of marijuana, goes down. And so you have a double whammy. You have increased percentage of THC, which is now up to, in some plants, 32%. And it was only like 3 or 4% back in the 90s. And then you also have less of the cannabidiol, which could ameliorate the effects of the THC. So it's a much, much more potent plant that we're talking about, much more toxicity. So that's the first thing for everybody to know. And I think the other thing that I really want to emphasize is that the effects on the youth brain are so much more dramatically negative than they are on the adult brain. So the teenage brain is still maturing, growing, developing. All the little neurons are making connections, but up until age 25. And so the brain is really very immature. And the younger a teenager starts using marijuana, the more likely they are to become addicted, the more likely they are to affect the areas of the brain that will allow them to learn, to memorize, to plan and strategize. So their whole lives are affected. There's a study from New
Let me
Zealand
ask
that.
you.
Sorry.
Let me ask you this real quickly, because no, we've only got about 30 seconds. But after this day, what changes are you hoping to see real quickly?
Well, we'd like all parents and teenagers to understand, don't start. And if you start, stop, because it can become addicting. It's devastating to the adolescent brain and should not be used, and we'd love to see it not legalized.
Dr. Jane Anderson, Vice President of the American College of Pediatricians, thank you so much. This is an incredible study and information. Thank you for coming on and unpacking this for us.
Thank you for having me.